key to come as well. But let's get to it. All guests come to you from the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. It's always a pleasure to check in with the Athletics' Matt Barrows. Matt, Happy New Year. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy New Year to you, too.
Well, I appreciate that. A sneaky good game. That was actually fun on New Year's Eve there with the 49ers or on New Year's Day, I should say, with the 49ers and the Raiders. I thought it would be a little bit more comfortable, but, hey, a win is a win. How do you explain maybe, Matt, I don't know if struggle's the right word, but we didn't have a dominant performance from that Raiders defense, which I thought we would against Jarrett Stidham and the Raiders.
Yeah, and I think the 49ers thought they would as well, and Nick Bosa said as much, as that they may have underestimated him. To me, they started out thinking that they were just going to kind of bring Stidham along slowly and, lean heavily on their running game. And I think the 49ers were very aggressive to stop that running game, and they were overly aggressive, so they fell for a lot of play fakes and things like that. And they really had trouble with Josh Jacobs. I mean, he would not go down on the first hit. He really abused their cornerbacks. Anytime he got to the edge and a cornerback tried to bring him down, they failed. So there was a lot of yards after the initial contact for him. And they just got rolling. I mean, anytime a team can get its running game going, and then you get the play-action game, and then you've got an aggressive quarterback who's got nothing to lose, and you have Darren Waller coming back and sort of being put into the game plan more heavily than he had been. It just started to snowball from there. To their credit, I think the 49ers started to really hit Stidham after halftime, and that had an effect, obviously, on a couple of interceptions, but they were not quite as in control then as they were early in the game.
Matt Barrows from The Athletic joining us. Matt, kind of just to follow up on that a little bit, do you then subscribe more to the idea that the 49ers just kind of got caught, unsuspecting of some things early in the game versus the Raiders kind of exposed some things on defense potentially?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, this is a team that had an 8-game winning streak going in. It's got to end at some point. And in that way, I think it was, a good game for the 49ers in that they got frightened that they were going to lose. They almost lost, but they didn't. So it sort of kind of shocks them back out of some of their habits that they had. There are some flaws on this team. There's some flaws in the defense that the Raiders absolutely shown a spotlight on. And one of them is they've got a young cornerback opposite a veteran cornerback. So who are you going to pick on? If you're the opponent, you're going to pick on Deommodore Lenoir. He did not have his best game, either in the run game or in pass coverage. And then, there's some back-end issues. Like I said, Talanoa Hufanga, when he makes mistakes in that he's a little bit too aggressive going in one direction and gets manipulated, on that back end sometimes. And that's what happened on that initial Waller touchdown. Again, to his credit, they corrected at halftime, and so it wasn't as bad after the half. That leads me to think that they absolutely know what these issues are, and they're going to take care of them moving forward.
Matt, I don't know if these two things go together, but we know the Niners, when they were 3-4, no one thought they could be a 1 seed, but that's still in play if everything goes right for them this week and a win and some help with Philadelphia losing. But also there's a potential for some return of players coming back. I don't know if they go hand in hand because you'd love to give even more rest if possible if you knew you were going to have a bye week, but they don't know that. Is that related at all as far as the return of some of the players, what their postseason status could be?
No, I mean, I think if these guys are ready to go, they want to get them on the field just to kind of get them rolling. I mean, who knows how many days it takes for a player coming back from injury to kind of get back up to full speed. It's different for every player, but it does take time. And so I think that they want to get that process going for Elijah Mitchell and for Deebo Samuel. I think Kevin Givens, the defensive tackle, is probably a week later than those guys, but I expect to see Samuel and Mitchell in practice. And if they're good, It's not going to be their full allotment of snaps against the Cardinals, but they'll get some with the idea that, okay, we're going to ramp them up to full speed so that whenever that first playoff game does come around, they're going to be ready to roll. So, yeah, I think it's sort of a big priority this week to get some of those guys a decent amount of snaps so that process is well underway for when that first playoff game is.
And speaking of the playoffs, Matt, we were kind of going over some of the potential scenarios for that. And right now, I just kind of want to look at if the Niners do remain in the 2 seed. You're looking at your potential opponents being Green Bay, Detroit, or Seattle. Does any of those teams kind of scare you more than another?
Yeah, the Green Bay does. They've got this quarterback. And I know that the 49ers have had a real mastery over him in the Packers in the playoffs. But anytime you're playing a guy like Aaron Rodgers, with that arm, that ability to make plays, and also history. I mean, he could, in one game, erase a lot of bad memories. But he's had against the 49ers. Those memories, by the way, started back in 2005 when they overlooked him for Alex Smith. So, motivated, really talented. They're starting to play a lot better. They just throttled the Vikings. If I'm the 49ers, I'd much rather play the Vikings in the opening round, which is impossible. But, I mean, some teams are getting hot at the end of the season. Some teams are cooling off. The Packers are getting hot. The Vikings are cooling off. So that's the team I would want to avoid. Every other team, every other first-round opponent, I think that the 49ers are, they're well matched against any team in the NFC. But, a team that has a really talented quarterback would be the one that I would probably want to avoid the most.
Speaking of quarterbacks, as we're talking with Matt Barrows from The Athletic, Brock Purdy came in right during the middle of this win streak. And to his credit, to the team's credit, they haven't really been tested until this last week against the Raiders. The team had won comfortably, Matt, multiple score games, and he's been a big part of that. And they're a Super Bowl caliber type team, so he's constantly going to be evaluated. What do you think Kyle Shanahan learned about him and the rest of the team in kind of what I would say is his first close game as the starting quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, it was playoff-like atmosphere, even though the Raiders were kind of on the verge of being eliminated from the playoffs in that game. And even though the crowd was divided among 49ers and Raiders fans, it was loud for both teams. I don't know if it was quite as loud as that 2019 game in New Orleans, which was a real, true warm-up for the game in Seattle that they would play later to get them into that number 1 seed. But, the bottom line is that Brock Purdy played really well, was really composed, and made plays when he needed to in that sort of environment. I mean, I think that just tells the 49ers, what they've been seeing is not a mirage. And if it ever gets to a point where, Garoppolo is now ready to play, or he's on the verge of being ready to play, I think it tells the 49ers, okay, we don't need to rush him back. We don't need to rush him back before he's ready, because Brock Purdy can handle the situation. He can be poised. He can make the right throws. He can lead a 2-minute drive in a very stressful situation. So I think it was very valuable in a lot of ways. If you're the 49ers, you'd love to see your team blow out the opponent week in and week out. But, boy, from sort of a curiosity standpoint, Purdy played really well in a difficult situation.
Matt, when you look at that, how well Brock Purdy played down the stretch, I think one of the guys that really stuck out to me in that game along with him was Brandon Aiyuk, who has, really come into his own, almost sort of under the radar just because some of the stars he plays with on offense. How crucial has he been to the overall function of that offense this year?
Huge, especially with no Deebo Samuel for this stretch, and Samuel missed a game early in the season as well. He's been the constant. I mean, this was his first game over 100 yards, but there have been so many games where he's around 80 yards, between 80 and 85. I mean, it's like clockwork. And I know he had the drop early on, and Kyle Shanahan was saying that there were some things that he was doing or not doing early in the game that bothered him. Kyle Shanahan scrutinizes no position like he does wide receiver, and he gives those guys, a very, very tough time. But obviously, it's something that was not an issue after halftime. And you're right. I mean, Aiyuk carried them on that final drive. Should have been the game-winning drive. There was a missed field goal, but it just came up clutch time after time. And really, that's the other part of the story is that he's been trying to build a rapport with quarterbacks since the offseason. He spent all of the early offseason with Trey Lance trying to do that, and then when Lance got hurt, he did the same with Jimmy Garoppolo, and now he's trying to do that with Brock Purdy, and it's been difficult because Purdy hasn't been able to practice in full because of that oblique rib injury that he was dealing with. So it's hard to get on the same page as your wide receiver when you can't throw in practice. That was another kind of sign, positive sign at the end of that game, is that Purdy and Aiyuk were starting to build that chemistry, and it was apparent in that last quarter.
Well, the Niners try to get their 10th in a row this weekend in their final game of the year. Matt, we always appreciate your insight. Happy New Year to you, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
All right, sounds good, guys. Talk to you then.
All right, thank you. That's Matt Barrows from The Athletic. Make sure you check out all his work there. Full breakdown. Again, Niners winners of 9 in a row. Arizona, the final matchup. They've lost 6 in a row. The Cardinals have just fallen